Hey, Father Albert, it's so good to see you today.
It's good to be here, Sister Estelle, down here in Texas, and
Oh
you're
my,
up on the East Coast. So
I know, I know.
it's incredible what technology can do.
Isn't it amazing?
But I entered the Franciscan order in 1976. I was ordained a priest in 1983. And then in 1992, I got to fulfill my childhood dream. And I went to mainland China, and I was a missionary in mainland China for 11 and a half years. I started off on the island of Taiwan, learning Chinese, learning how to read, write, and speak. And then I moved into mainland China. I was one of the first foreigners actually allowed to live in the city of Wuhan. And then I moved up north to the capital of Beijing. And I was there till 2004. And then I began to be followed by the Gong'anji, the Chinese security police in Beijing. So I knew at that point my cover was blown. So I had to come back. I came back to the United States. I taught for 2 years at the university level at Quincy University in Quincy, Illinois. And then I was a part-time teacher at Catholic Theological Union in Chicago. And then I started going back to what I thought I would never do again, which was full-time preaching of parish missions and giving one-day workshops on the spiritual life. And so over a period of 8 years, I racked up 1.3 million frequent flyer miles
Oh my goodness.
on United Airlines. And now I'm the chaplain at Cedar Break Catholic Retreat Center in the Diocese of Austin. The retreat center is located in Temple, Texas. And I've been here now for 2 years, and I'm connected to the Franciscan community at Mission San Jose in San Antonio.
Wow. What a journey your life has taken you on. A boy from the bayou.
That's right. And they tell me I still talk like I come from the bayou.
You do that, Father Albert. You don't have the Texas slang down yet. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so my first question is, how did you originally come up with the idea for your spirituality resources, your books and DVDs, and is there a story behind it?
Yeah, there is a story behind it.
Good.
Because it all originated in the Archdiocese of Chicago.
No.
I was living in the Archdiocese of Chicago, and I was going around the Archdiocese giving a lot of my one-day workshops on the spiritual life and spirituality. And I can still remember I was at St. Joseph's Church in Libertyville, Illinois, which is located in the diocese, in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And I remember that afternoon during one of our breaks, a younger couple came up to me and they said, you know, Father, do you have any of this information either in book form or in DVD form? And I said to them, no, unfortunately, I don't. And they said, you know, there are so many excellent resources in faith formation. You have Jeff Cavins, who has his Bible timeline published by the Ascension Press. You have all of these scriptural resources, but there's nothing for us people who are interested in spiritual formation, spiritual life, or spirituality. And it got me thinking, you know what? They are dead right. There really is nothing. There was nothing at the time dealing with spirituality, spiritual formation, and the spiritual life. So that's when I came up with the idea of writing the book, Catching Fire, Becoming Flame, a guide for spiritual transformation. And then I approached you people at Paraclete Press. Let's turn it into 2 DVDs, which we ended up doing. We did Catching Fire, Becoming Flame. And then the second DVD is called Keeping the Fire Alive. And then I ended up I wrote a little book on discernment called Saying Yes, Discovering and Responding to God's Will in Your Life. And we recorded that as a DVD as well. And then I did, during the year for Consecrated Life, I did Come Follow Me, 6 responses to the call of Jesus. And in that DVD, it consists of 6 30-minute presentations. And I just basically enlighten people and show people the differences between Benedictine spirituality, Cistercian spirituality, Franciscan spirituality, Carmelite spirituality, Dominican spirituality, and Ignatian spirituality. And that has been very successful. It's already aired on EWTN. It has already also aired on Catholic TV of Boston. And then I guess it was like maybe 3 years ago, I came up with the idea of doing a series in DVD form called the Beatitudes.
Yeah, and I love that one.
Yeah, attitudes that we are called to live in our lives as everyday Christians. So it's been a great ride for me with Paraclete. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun, and it has inspired thousands. Really, we have churches all over the country using your resources, and it's terrific. Because like you said, there's not a lot out there for personal transformation and growth.
Let me just tell you, Sister Estelle, how some parishes have been using my resources.
Yes, please do. That was my next question.
Everybody struggles with mystagogia, that period of time after someone has entered the church or after they have been baptized. And typically, the typical parish, because they don't know what to do with the season of mystagogia after the Easter Vigil, what they usually do is they bring back the catechumens who have been recently baptized or entered the Catholic Church. They bring them back for 1 week just to talk about their experience with the Easter Vigil. Then what they do is they bring them back a second week to get them involved in the parish. And then unfortunately, they just let them go. And how many newly Roman Catholics have said to me, can't they do something more for us in mystagogia? Because we want to now deepen our experience, our relationship with God. And so a lot of parishes have been using my DVDs, Catching Fire, Becoming Flame, Keeping the Flame Alive, Saying Yes, and the Beatitudes. They have been using those DVDs as designing a whole 6 to 12 week period of mystagogia. So now that those who have entered the church can now deepen their relationship with Jesus, because this is what it's all about. Discipleship is all about having a relationship with Jesus. It's not just about having water poured over your head, but really it's learning to encounter God in the nitty-gritty of our everyday life. And then some parishes who have like youth groups or young adult groups, and on many Catholic colleges and the Newman Center, or in campus ministry, they have been using my DVD and book, Saying Yes, Discovering and Responding to God's Will in Your Life, because it's a great little resource in helping young adults to discover how they can help Jesus build the kingdom of God, as St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit, as he was always nice to use that expression, that we now are meant to be co-workers with Jesus. He stole that idea actually from the letter to St. Paul, when St. Paul calls us co-workers for the kingdom. But that's something that is sung in the Ignatian choir, that we help Jesus build the kingdom. And one way that we discover our unique approach to helping Jesus build the kingdom is through that wonderful practice of what we call in our Christian tradition, discernment, trying to discern what is God asking of me today. And if I remember, ask me about how that book, Saying Yes, came to be written, the book and the DVD. And there's a story behind that. But also just going back to how parishes have been using my resources. Another great challenge for a lot of parishes, especially parishes that have been involved in giving retreats such as Acts, Christ Renews His Parish, the Crescio movement. A lot of people who have made these parish-style retreats, Acts, Christ Renews His Parish, Crescio, after they've made the experience, they catch fire, but then there's nothing used as a follow-up.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the parishes now have been using these resources, both in book form as well as in DVD form, to help people who have had these wonderful experiences on retreat, and they can now deepen their spiritual life. And in a special way, I've noticed a lot of parishes, they have discovered what I discovered early on. I believe it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Pope Francis wrote that wonderful pastoral exhortation called Rejoice and Be Glad, Holiness in the Contemporary World. And unfortunately, Sister Estelle, not very many people are aware of this marvelous explication of the spiritual life that Pope Francis wrote in Rejoice and Be Glad. I was preaching up in St. John's in Canada on the day that document was released. And as I read the document, wave after wave of enthusiasm came over me. And I kept saying to myself, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. So that very afternoon, I wrote to your publisher, John Sweeney. And I said to John, listen, John, Pope Francis has just issued a wonderful exhortation on how to be a saint in the contemporary world. It's called Rejoice and Be Glad. I would love to write a book around this apostolic exhortation, explaining some of the points that Pope Francis makes. And that gave birth to my book, Practical Holiness, Pope Francis as Spiritual Companion. Because really, practical holiness, it really gives us an insight, not only into the spiritual life of Pope Francis, but he actually gives us time-tested guidelines. It's like when you read the book Practical Holiness, as you read his pastoral exhortation, Rejoice and Be Glad, it's like having Pope Francis as your own spiritual director, encouraging you and challenging you, and also showing where you need to be careful, where you can get yourself in trouble. And just finally, St. Francis Cabrini Church in Littleton, Colorado. Now, I've been there, I guess, 3 times. I've preached 2 parish missions there, and then maybe 4 times. And twice they flew me out there to give one of my one-day workshops in the spiritual life. St. Francis Cabrini Church in Littleton, Colorado is one of these extraordinarily large mega churches in the Catholic tradition. And so what they have done in order to promote community life, the entire parish, something like 90% of the parish is broken down into small study groups that get together oftentimes once a month, sometimes as often as twice a month. And your study group is always encouraged to go to the same Mass every Sunday and to sit together. It is that large of a parish. But they too have been using a lot of my spiritual resources in order to help promote the community life and the spirituality of the 90% of the parish that has joined these small faith communities. So it has been an extraordinary ride with Paraclete Press doing these DVDs. And I'm so grateful that y'all were willing to do that, because actually I had approached a previous publisher who said, oh, people are not buying DVDs anymore. Nobody would be interested. And yet you good people at Paraclete Press were willing to take the risk on me. And I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for us all.
Well, we're glad we did, Father Albert. And also your DVDs are available through DVD and streaming. So people can just stream them on their computer and share it in their group. And, it's going to be timeless. Your message is timeless. And it actually brings me to my next question for you, probably the last question, but I really wanted you to talk a little bit about how your different material is relevant today in a time of isolation, and us doing this online learning on our own, so to speak, in our own houses, but yet trying to build a church without walls. And what would you say? What do you say to the leaders and catechists of Archdiocese of Chicago?
Do that. You know, I was born and raised in New Orleans, and I had Catholic education all my life. And you know, the good sisters, the Marionite Sisters of the Sacred Heart, where I went to a grammar school at St. Rita's in New Orleans on Lower Line Street. And the good sisters used to always remind us, Deus ubique est. God is everywhere. You know, you don't need to go to a physical location in order to encounter God, because God comes to us each and every day in the nitty gritty of our ordinary life, in our children, in our spouses, in the situations we find ourselves in our deepest feelings, and in our most creative thoughts. My life. And the message that I always try to convey to people in my resources is, my life and your life is the megaphone through which God speaks. And so, you know, I'm 65 years old, and for too long, I walked around with my ears up in the clouds, thinking if I kept my ears up in the clouds, I would hear the voice of God speak to me. Well, you know what? Now at 65 years old, I've come to realize, if you want to hear the voice of God, keep your ears to the ground. You know, listen to your life, because your life is the megaphone through which God speaks. And even during this time of the coronavirus and this terrible pandemic that has upended all of our lives, I think it's important for all of us to remember that God is with us in the midst of this pandemic, and he continues to speak. And so all of us are really challenged. You know, there's that wonderful expression used of the Blessed Mother in the second chapter of the Gospel of Luke. It says, she pondered these things in her heart. And this is exactly what you and I should be doing. We should be pondering our lives, because even in the midst of this social isolation, God is still speaking to each and every one of us, cajoling us, challenging us, and encouraging us to build his kingdom in the unique way that only I can build it.
Amen.
So that's when people ask me what, you know, they always say every preacher just has one message, and it's really the gifted preacher who has two. And I always say the one message that I always have is, God speaks to us in the nitty gritty of our everyday life. And our challenge is learning to listen to my life, because this is the megaphone through which God speaks to me.
Thank you so much, Father Albert. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's been a great joy. And I have to apologize to the good people of the Archdiocese of Chicago, because I have preached in so many of your parishes. I've given many parish missions and so many one-day workshops in your different parishes, that I really feel terrible that I cannot be with you live. But hopefully another time we can be together live.